All right, so we're going to do a quick overview of the 0.96.2 patch for the last spell. I know I'm a little late to the party, but I had an opportunity to play this patch a couple of days ago, and I think I got a lot of good insight about the nature of the patch and the value of some of the changes. So first headlining ability I think is incredible, and this is the undo action ability, which allows you to undo any movement-based action that did not deal damage. I'm going to kind of paraphrase, there are a lot of other games that allow you to basically undo anything that doesn't have an RNG component. So as an example, you can use the sword dash ability, whose name I'm forgetting now, and if you don't hit anything, you can decide that it didn't work out well and undo it. Huge quality of life improvement here. Really loving this change. Next up is that jump over can now be used on crevice and water tiles. So this is applicable to Lakeburg. It's applicable to Gildenberg, where you have like those holes in the ground. I think this is very interesting because I believe it synergizes with Leapfrog, which is a perk that I don't take very often. So I haven't tested that yet, but if you can jump over 2 crevice tiles or 2 water tiles, I think there's some interesting hit and run tactics that this could start to open up. Next is skills that have a basically self effect, like armor and things like that, now have what's called caster effect. And pairing with that, now caster effect abilities you don't have to target anymore. I have to enable this in the settings. I haven't done it yet, but this will be really nice because it means that at the end of your turn, if you just want to armor up twice, you just tap the armor button twice and you're done. No additional anything. And then last, and this is just kind of like a fun change, but I definitely noticed it, a Victorious Haven will have a pillar of light in the world map. This goes for the final, once you defeat it, there's like a cutscene animation that has a number of pillars that come up from it. And also on the area select screen, you get a nice little like pillar showing that you've defeated it. For bug fixes, back protection and undo were apparently behaving strangely. They fixed that. And then 1 by 1 being reset by non-attacking skills. So this was annoying because I think if you armored up, you would lose 1 by 1. I think they need to go a step further with this though. And I think 1 by 1 should not be reset by non-damaging skills. So kind of like what they did with the undo button, it's really frustrating when you have 1 by 1 stacked up and then you do a non-damaging ability like weaken on the spell book. Glass cannon and organic armor were not refreshing wounds. Okay. Septic shock was ignoring stun resistance. I thought septic shock was kind of weak when it ignored stun resistance, so I'm not sure this is going to be super impactful. But I guess I could see how it could have been really powerful for like stunning bulkies that have a very high stun resist. Fatality had an issue that could be used with a shortcut without being displayed. Interesting. Soft lock issue. Splitters were staying in the fog. I never ran into that. Bug in the character equipment panel that was not showing the right items sometimes. Okay, didn't run into that as well. There was a visual bug with contamination. We'll talk more about contamination later. I think that ability needs a bit of a rework as well. All of my meta upgrades are already unlocked, so whatever was blocking it wasn't a problem for me. And then I didn't play Gildenberg yet. So none of those bug fixes are kind of like game changers from my perspective, but the top couple I think have some value. So now into the perk changes. So I've put the perk in its current form in the black box and then the changes that they made above it from the patch notes. So they changed it to be every 25 max health, but with a lower minimum. So you basically had a 5 head start, but you need more health to increase it. I never ran into a situation where I was getting so much out of this that I think it made a huge difference, but it indicates to me if they're nerfing it ever so slightly that maybe Bodybuilder is stronger than I gave it credit for. Spiky Skin is now Spiky Counter, and now it is 20 plus 200% of block. So whenever the hero is hit, automatically cast the counter on them with a base damage of 20 plus 200% of the hero's block. I think this is interesting. As a reminder, it's hard to get a lot of things hitting your heroes because obviously you only have 4 sides of adjacency. And usually I'm not stacking insane block, but I guess this makes this very beneficial for characters where you're going for high defense. But I'm not sure. Given that it doesn't scale off of armor, I don't know. I guess there was a world in which 20% of max health was just an insane number, and that's why they decided to move it to block. I would have liked to have seen them move it to armor, because block doesn't get that high. Maybe I'm missing out on that one, though. Next, Vampire now includes Execute. Not much to talk about there. I don't use Execute a lot, but it is a free action, so I probably should consider it more often. But you're still getting the same health regen. It's just one more opportunity to get a little more health regen. And then Organic Armor has had its conversion rate increased. So it's plus 50% healing received, and all of the hero's armor is transformed into health at a slight bonus, which I think is good because I think it's harder to get armor than it is to get health. So I think that's a nice balance there. You'll get a little more health out of Organic Armor moving forward. So back protection, tweaked to better suit our design, no more exploit. The perk saves its value throughout the current run. So what they're referring to is you could take some damage during your turn from, say, like counter attack or the mirror affix on elites, and then go back and stand next to a tree again and refresh your armor, basically. So I think that's the only change. It's just keeping that value. One thing that I think is very interesting is that back protection has a weird synergy with Organic Armor in the sense that your health pool fluctuates radically based on whether you're proccing back protection or not, which is a little weird from my perspective. Head On gets just a 10% buff. So every 4 tile travels, the next attack gets plus 25% physical damage and no block. So this is the black box here is not updated. I got these from the wiki. So it should be 25. That was the change that was made. I think for a momentum physical build, I think this is quite valuable. Unfortunately, it's not going to work on scepters because scepters are not doing physical damage. And I generally think of scepters as king of the momentums. Berserk is moves from hit to attack. So to explain the difference, hit involves you actually taking damage, and attack can include dodging and things like that. So I think the Berserk dodge build is looking a lot more interesting coming out of this one. Now, mana growth gets a slight benefit in the early game. So if you take it as a tier 1 skill, you're going to get 4 mana right off the bat plus another 2. So you get 6 at level 1, or I guess you pick this up at level 2, so you'll be getting 8. So I think it's a nice change. It basically makes no difference in the late game and a very marginal difference in the early game. And either way, mana growth is not something that I'm taking on any of my characters, so I don't know that there's a huge value there. Magic Fuel just gets a 5% damage buff, so damage is increased by 30% of the hero's current mana. So again, with the previous skill Mana Growth, I can see a small benefit here, but mana pools don't get that huge, so I'm not convinced that Magic Fuel is ever going to be that wildly impactful. And then last but not least, Sheer Power gets a huge change here, which is magic damage now ignores 100% of the armor, has now been changed to 50% of the target's resistances. This effect can be cumulative with magic damage's natural property, which I don't remember what percentage magic damage has. But, so magic damage already had a 50% resistance piercing, and then now you're getting another 50, so you only get up to 100. It's possible that the old Sheer Power was doing 150% piercing, which would mean that it did more damage against armored targets, which for a tier 5 skill might be good. That might be correct. So I'm not sure about this change. I think they were probably just fixing a bug that was a bit counterintuitive. Now, Perseverance is a skill that I've slept on, but I think I actually like it a bit more, especially with the hand crossbow, because you're baiting a lot of misses, which has the ability to restore a lot of action points. So basically it went from 3 dodges give 1 action point to 2 attacks that are dodged by at least 1 unit. So now it is attacks dodged. So I think that they fixed exactly the thing that I was just talking about, looking at the reading. So it says every 2 attacks from the hero dodged, restore 1 action point. So what they're saying is you can't get multiple dodges from a single attack. And you gain an accuracy buff, which is pretty nominal. I don't think that's useful. So longer weapons gets a buff, which surprises me because I think that longer weapons was already a very strong skill. I rate skill range very strongly because if you're stuck in a dead zone and you can't hit anything, life is not good. So I almost always take skill range when I see it in character level ups. And similarly here, I took longer weapons pretty frequently because I don't think 15% reliability is too terribly punishing. But I know that I underrate reliability. So Septic Shock, to counterbalance the bug fix where it was ignoring stun chance, they have increased its base stun chance to be 50%. I think that's good. I think it is still a little weak for trying to stun most of the things that are going to survive having a lot of poison applied to them. And then Poisonous now does 30 poison damage as opposed to 20 and poisons longer. I have had a really hard time with this ability. I think that it is really difficult to create characters that can really like sit in the thick of things and apply a lot of poison damage. Now, Poisonous with Septic Shock could be interesting, right? Maybe you could stand in a huge pool of things and stun people repeatedly, but there is also, I believe, innate stun resist, so you can't chain stun. Crit Master basically has a slight nerf here. Well, actually, it's a slight buff, technically. So it's 20% crit power, and then for every 5 critical hits landed, it's 10% more, as opposed to 12 units killed. So now it is incentivizing you to stack crit very actively, and I think that's probably a smart way to design this skill, because now the more you crit, the more likely it is for you to get a lot of crit power. And I also think that the short bow with rain of arrows, the hand crossbow with blaze are potentially going to be critting a lot. And we may see another change to this, which is for every five attacks that critical, to make it so that it doesn't kind of go crazy. That, or we may see an upper bound put on it. Nimble. So this is a perk that I already took. It has now changed its name to Nimbleness, and the dodge bonus has gone from 10 to 15%. Already a great skill. You don't want your heroes wounded. Getting 2 movement points and 15 dodge for 1 perk point seems like a win to me. Blood magic. Now it costs more blood. I had on my last run 2 characters with the blood magic perk because I was just playing around on a lower difficulty. And what I can say is that now you're spending some real health. It is surprising how much you can drain yourself and how much harder it is with vampirism or other abilities to recoup all of the health that you are spending. So they probably got this right. You're going to have to lean a bit more on your daily health regen in order to be able to recoup everything, but you're probably not going to leave. Previously, you would leave knights at full health after chain casting to your heart's content. Now I think you will spend down and you'll need your daily health regen to kind of top you back up. So Harvester got a very minor buff because the number of enemies to kill was halved -1 and the daily mana regen was halved, which means that you have a bit more granularity and you're getting a bit more mana regen. I already think Harvester is like one of the best skills. I take it on almost every character because it gives so much sustain. But I think this was just a straight buff to an already very, very strong skill. And then other balancing changes, the main damage max value has been increased from 100 to 200%. So what this means is your range, melee, and magic damage modifier can now be up to 200%. I'm super curious how people are getting there. In my experience, like I've had some people, I think, crack like 70 or 80, but 200% seems impossible. I could see a world where maybe once in a while I would have hit the 100% cap, so maybe it makes sense. But those are the patch notes for 0.96.2. Really nice quality of life changes. The undo feature is the highlight best feature in my book, but overall the game is feeling good. The only criticism that I have is I do think they have a bug that is a memory leak because performance degrades over the course of long play sessions that I think they need to address. But overall, still really enjoying the last spell and have daily content coming out. So if this video was helpful or useful to you, feel free to leave a like, leave a comment. And other than that, I will see you in the next one. Happy hunting. Bye-bye.